The little boy stood in the middle of the roadside diner parking lot, holding a battered red toy motorcycle with both hands as if it were the most valuable thing he owned. His shoes were soaked from the cold rain, his thin jacket was too small for him, and his lips trembled as he looked up at a group of leather-clad bikers gathered beside their motorcycles. Then he said something that made every man there go completely silent. "Buy my bike, sir. Mommy hasn't eaten in 2 days." For a moment, the only sound was rain striking the pavement and the ticking of cooling motorcycle engines. The boy's name was Noah, and he was only 8 years old. He had no idea that the men standing in front of him were about to discover a story far bigger than a hungry mother and a little toy motorcycle. He had no idea that, within the next few hours, they would uncover the people who had taken nearly everything his family had. If stories about kindness, second chances, and ordinary people standing up for someone who has nowhere else to turn touch your heart, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes a small act of kindness can become the beginning of an entirely different life. The rain had been falling over the small town of Millbrook, Ohio, since early morning. It was the kind of cold autumn rain that seemed to find its way through every layer of clothing. Inside the roadside diner, a group of 6 bikers had gathered for their usual Saturday breakfast. They called themselves the Iron Valley Riders, though they were nothing like the frightening gang people sometimes imagined when they saw leather vests and roaring motorcycles. They were construction workers, mechanics, veterans, fathers, grandfathers, and small business owners who had formed a riding club years earlier after losing a close friend. Their leader was a broad-shouldered mechanic named Marcus Reed, a quiet man in his late 40s whose gray beard and weathered face made him look intimidating until he smiled. That morning, Marcus had been laughing with his friend Caleb while the others finished their coffee. Then the diner door opened, and a small figure appeared through the rain. Noah stood there alone. He looked exhausted. His hair was dripping wet, and he clutched the little red motorcycle against his chest. The waitress, Hannah, recognized him immediately. She had seen the boy around town before, usually walking beside his mother, Clara Bennett. Clara had once worked at the local bakery, but she had disappeared from work several weeks earlier. Noah slowly approached the bikers. He stopped in front of Marcus and held out the toy motorcycle. He explained that it had been his favorite toy since his father gave it to him before leaving their lives forever, and that he was willing to sell it because his mother had not eaten properly for 2 days. Marcus stared at the child, unable to find words. The other bikers exchanged uncomfortable looks. Caleb crouched down and asked Noah where his mother was. The boy pointed across the street toward an old apartment building. Marcus immediately pulled out his wallet, but Noah shook his head. He did not want charity. He wanted to sell something. That small distinction broke something inside the older man. Marcus took the toy motorcycle, placed a $20 bill in Noah's hand, and then quietly gave the toy back. He told Noah that the motorcycle was worth more than $20 because it had already proven what kind of heart its owner had. The bikers followed Noah across the street. They found Clara sitting on the edge of a worn mattress in a nearly empty apartment. The electricity had been shut off. The refrigerator was empty except for a bottle of water. There was a folding chair, a cracked table, a few blankets, and almost nothing else. Clara looked embarrassed when the bikers entered. She tried to stand, but her legs were shaking badly. Marcus immediately noticed something strange. There were bruises around Clara's wrist, old enough to have faded but recent enough to tell a story. He also noticed a stack of unopened letters on the floor. Caleb picked one up and saw the words "Final Notice." Another was from the landlord. Another came from a bank. Clara begged them not to get involved. She said she had lost her job, fallen behind on rent, and sold almost everything she owned trying to keep Noah fed. But when Marcus asked why she had lost her job, she lowered her eyes. That was when the real story began to emerge. Clara had been working at Bennett's Bakery, a family-owned business she had inherited after her father died. The bakery had been successful for years. But after her father's death, Clara discovered that her uncle, Raymond, had been managing the business finances. She trusted him completely. Within months, money started disappearing. Bills went unpaid. Suppliers stopped delivering. The bakery's accounts were drained, and Clara was told she had debts she could not possibly repay. Raymond convinced her that she had signed documents transferring control of the bakery to him. Clara insisted she never knowingly signed anything. But by the time she realized what had happened, the business was gone. Then came the final blow. Raymond had taken out loans against the bakery and used Clara's name on several documents. When Clara confronted him, he threatened to take Noah away if She went to the police. He told her that nobody would believe a struggling single mother over a respected businessman. Clara had been terrified. She sold her car first, then her furniture, then her jewelry. Eventually, she lost the apartment she had once rented near the bakery and moved into the tiny place where the bikers found her. She had spent weeks fighting paperwork and trying to prove what had happened, but every door seemed to close in her face. Marcus listened without interrupting. Then he noticed one more thing. On the table was a photograph of Clara's father standing in front of the bakery. In the background was a familiar red sign. Marcus recognized the name because his motorcycle club had used the bakery for years. His friend Caleb had even repaired the bakery's delivery van. Marcus asked Clara whether she still had any old business records. She pointed toward a cardboard box. Inside were receipts, bank statements, contracts, copies of emails, and handwritten notes from her father. Caleb spent nearly an hour sorting through them. The evidence was messy, but there were inconsistencies everywhere. Several signatures did not match Clara's handwriting. Some financial transfers had been made while Clara was hospitalized after collapsing from exhaustion. More importantly, there were copies of emails between Raymond and a business associate discussing the sale of the bakery. The bikers realized this was not simply a family dispute. Someone had planned it. Marcus contacted a lawyer he knew through his construction business, a sharp attorney named Rebecca Collins. Rebecca reviewed the documents and immediately told Marcus that Clara might have a strong case. But evidence alone would not be enough. They needed the original financial records and proof connecting Raymond to the transactions. That afternoon, the bikers began making calls. Caleb contacted the bakery's former supplier. Another biker, Thomas, tracked down an accountant who had worked with Clara's father. Marcus went to the bank with Clara and helped her request copies of older records. And slowly, the truth began to surface. Raymond had not only taken control of the bakery, he had been moving money through another company registered under a different name. The same company had recently purchased a large commercial property outside town. Clara had been robbed of her business, her savings, her home, and her confidence. But the worst discovery came from an old email. Raymond had written that Clara was too frightened to fight, and that, once the bakery was sold, she would have nothing left. Marcus read the sentence twice. Then he closed his eyes. The bikers had spent years riding together, helping stranded motorists, raising money for veterans, and fixing motorcycles for children. But this was different. This was a woman whose entire life had been dismantled by someone she trusted. They decided Clara would not face the fight alone. Within days, Rebecca filed the necessary legal actions. The bikers helped Clara secure temporary housing, food, transportation, and childcare. They refused to give her money without helping her rebuild her independence. Marcus offered her a position managing the bookkeeping for his growing auto repair business, but Clara initially hesitated. She had forgotten how it felt to believe in herself. Noah, however, had not. One evening, he placed the little red motorcycle on Marcus's workbench and told him he wanted to keep it there because it had brought Mommy hope. Marcus turned away so the boy would not see him wipe his eyes. Months later, the court proceedings finally exposed the truth. Financial records and digital evidence proved that Raymond had transferred money without Clara's authorization and falsified documents. The bakery was returned to Clara, along with a substantial portion of the money that had been stolen. Raymond faced serious legal consequences for what he had done. But Clara did something nobody expected. She did not reopen the bakery exactly as it had been. She turned it into something new. She named it Noah's Corner, and part of the bakery became a small community kitchen where struggling families could receive free meals. Every Saturday morning, the Iron Valley Riders parked their motorcycles outside and helped serve breakfast. The first Saturday the bakery reopened, Clara stood behind the counter and watched Noah walk through the door carrying his little red motorcycle. He placed it on a shelf above the register. The toy was scratched, faded, and missing one of its tiny wheels. But to Clara, it was priceless. It reminded her of the morning when her son had been hungry enough to sell his favorite possession. It reminded her that, even when life had stripped them of almost everything, kindness had found them through strangers. A year later, Marcus visited the bakery on a rainy afternoon. Noah ran outside to greet him. Clara followed, smiling. Marcus looked at the little boy and asked whether he still wanted to sell his motorcycle. Noah laughed and shook his head. He said he had decided to keep it because it was the motorcycle that changed everything. Marcus smiled. He told Noah that the toy had not changed everything. Noah had. Because it took courage for an 8-year-old boy to walk into a room full of strangers and ask for help without pretending he wasn't afraid. And sometimes courage arrives in the smallest packages. Sometimes hope looks like a battered toy motorcycle. Sometimes kindness comes wearing a leather vest. And sometimes the people who take everything from you forget one important thing. They cannot take away the goodness that remains inside your heart. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes that kindness still matters, and subscribe for more stories that remind us that no one should have to face their darkest moment alone. Before we end, I want you to leave a comment with one simple word: kindness. Let that word be a reminder that when someone is struggling, we may never know how much one small act can mean. Because Clara once believed she had lost everything. But she eventually learned that she had never truly been alone. She had her son. She had her courage. And somewhere along a rainy Ohio road, 6 bikers had seen a hungry little boy holding a toy motorcycle and decided that his family deserved another chance. Sometimes, that is all a person needs. One person to notice. One person to care. And one person willing to say, without asking for anything in return, "You don't have to fight this alone."